Well, the latest Israel attacks on Iran has stoked fears that Iran could retaliate by closing the Strait of Hormuz between Iran and Oman, through which around 20% of global oil and gas demand flows. For more on this, let's now welcome Isaac Khambule, Professor of Political Economy at the University of Johannesburg. Prof, a very good afternoon to you, and thank you so much for your time. So as we look at the latest then from the Middle East and how likely Iran is to retaliate following the United States of America strike on those three nuclear sites, there are strong indications that Iran could possibly close the Strait of Hormuz. A number of experts telling us this kind of blockade will not just hit the world economically, but that Iran too is one with the most to lose. Just unpack then the significance of this shipping route and what the implications are if Iran could potentially retaliate by blocking it.
Good afternoon to you, Unati, and as well as all the viewers for SABC. As you've rightly indicated, a key issue now is there's a huge possibility that Iran is likely to close the Strait of Hormuz. And based on evidence that is emerging, it seems as if the parliament has approved of that particular decision. And in addition to this, we know that this is going to be a retaliatory strike against the US for the strikes that it carried out against Iran, particularly focusing on the nuclear side. But what is likely to be then the global fallout will be a huge impact in terms of shipping costs for all global economic activities, and as well as the mere fact that up to 30% of oil trade happens through the Strait of Hormuz. So this is likely again going to cause an increase in terms of the cost of oil, and as well as mainly all the energy sources such as oil and gas. So there's really going to be a number of shocks that we are going to experience, and it should be quite interesting then to see, as Iran has indicated, that if it does indeed close it, it is going to open the channel up for its allies, of which again is going to push countries such as China, Russia, to continue pushing for Iran to close that particular gap in terms of the Strait of Hormuz, in order to ensure that they could inflict particular economic harm to the US and as well as its Western allies.
Let's now talk about the United States and its position. I mean, Trump has previously criticized the U.S. involvement in other overseas conflicts, including in Iraq, where the U.S. and its allies, as you will recall, toppled Saddam Hussein in the early 2000s. Just recently, though, Trump speculated about regime change in Iran, posting too on his social media, it's not politically correct to use the term regime change. I mean, what can we read into these statements?
Well, it is definitely a source of regime change that the US has been pushing, and as well as we have seen that even the European Union is also pushing for the same posture, because of the idea that Iran has been a chaos for most EU nations, and as well as for the survival of Israel, as they have always indicated. But what is in actual fact happening here is it is the US and as well as the EU that is trying to push for stronger power within the Middle East, and they are using Israel as that particular source of continuing to democratize the Middle East, and as well as also ensuring that their interests are going to be protected. But if we look at some of the assertions that have been made by Trump, it clearly shows that the US has reached a particular point whereby they believe they need some sort of in Iran in order to put someone who's going to be pro-US and as well as pro-West. But funny enough, again, we also remember that during the Iranian Revolution, it was mainly the US and as well as its Western allies that again did away with a particular democratically elected government at that particular time. So now it seems as if they're going back now, because they realize that the current government does not necessarily represent or also benefits from the kinds of interest that the US is looking for. But again, the issue now is has Trump necessarily taken a decision that says we are pushing for regime change in this particular side of the Middle East? And if then that becomes a decision, it is likely again to cause a lot of animosity. And as well as we saw in the morning that from the foreign minister in Iran, who did indicate that they have particular foot soldiers in the US that that are likely to also cause instabilities if there are any decisions that are going to be taken to try and destabilize the current regime, and of which seems to be something that is unlikely to happen given the current power that the Iranian regime has, and as well as knowing that the US failed to destroy much of the nuclear arms that they were looking for.
Yeah, and I mean, you mentioned the Iranian's foreign minister. We understand he's now traveled to Moscow to meet with Russia's President Putin to talk about this war. What is Russia and China, quite frankly's position here, given too Iran's top military commander also saying his forces are now free to target U.S. interests in the region in response of this? I mean, there is now, of course, understandably so, this heightened fear across the board.
Well, definitely. So if we look at that, we know that Russia and China also want to benefit from this particular global uncertainty, and particularly through supporting Iran, because Iran is a source of power within the Middle East, and it is the one anchor that has been holding much of the interests that belong to China and as well as and Russia. But I think what is also of significance here is we are entering into what we call a multipolar world. So now we are entering a stage whereby it is not only the US that is likely to make a decision to say we are going to strike Iran. It is also particular countries that are supporting Iran that say, actually, we are going to veto any strikes against Iran. And in this particular case, should anything happen, then we are also likely going to support Iran in order for us to promote our interest within the Middle East. And second, we also know that China has been trying to also be vocal about the issue of Taiwan. Yeah. So this also gives it a particular arm that says, if you do this, then we are also going to take Taiwan. So now it really is interestingly going to be a game of the political economy, and as well as to whether we are going to see a multipolar world moving away from a world whereby the US is able to take decision on its own, or to a world whereby the likes of China and Russia are able to veto any decisions, and they're also able to support Iran militarily in order to weigh any war that they may experience from Israel and as well as Iran.
All right, Prof, let's leave it there for now. Thank you so much for your time and, of course, your analysis. I think we heard you loud and clear there, Professor Isaac Khambule, Professor of Political Economy at the University of Johannesburg, just weighing in there on that situation.